Welcome to the Faculty of Mathematics International Women in Mathematics Day celebration. My name is Lauren Hartman, and I am a Senior Development Officer here in the Faculty of Mathematics. And we're so happy that you've joined us here from around the world to join our virtual panel on entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship, the driving force of innovation. Soon you'll meet our esteemed panelists and moderator, all of whom are alumni of U Waterloo or very close friends of the university. Paul Salvini will be our moderator today. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Accelerator Center, a world-renowned not-for-profit facility dedicated to developing and strengthening technology-based businesses. He has over 20 years of executive leadership experience and proven success in inspiring teams and growing highly profitable, innovative, world-class companies. He's also a mathy, and he earned a B Math in 1992, majoring in CS and electrical engineering. Thank you, Paul, for joining us today. And thank you to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Lauren. You know, I love being called a mathy. It brings back good memories. I'm so delighted to be here today, serve as moderator for this panel on entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. My favorite topic. As Lauren said, I'm a proud graduate of University of Waterloo's Faculty of Mathematics from 1992. We have four amazing women serving as our panelists this afternoon, and all are incredibly accomplished in their careers. And I know we're going to have a great discussion. This whole topic of intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship, it truly is the driving force of innovation. And while innovation often just starts with an idea, it's only when that idea is implemented or put into action that innovation actually occurs. And all of the women on the panel today are true innovators in that sense. They've taken incredible ideas and turned them into successful innovations, either as entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs. So I'd like to now introduce the panelists. We have four of them. The first is Sherry Shannon Vanstone. Sherry is the CEO and founder of Profound Impact. She has received numerous awards for her success as an entrepreneur and for the amazing work that she has done within the broader community. Mathematician, entrepreneur, inventor, philanthropist, mentor, and corporate board member are a few of the words used to describe her accomplishments. Sherry's been involved in three very successful startup ventures: Scilink, Certicom, and TrustPoint Innovation, and recently has launched her new company called Profound Impact. Sherry has bachelor's degree in both math and Spanish, and she holds a master's degree in mathematics and was recently honored with a Doctor of Laws degree from Western University in London. Thank you, Sherry, for joining us. Our next panelist is Joanne McKinley. Joanne is a software engineering manager at Google. She co-founded the Google Waterloo office in 2005 as one of the first developers of mobile Gmail. And for years, Joanne led the delivery of mobile Gmail across multiple generations of platforms and co-authoring over a dozen software patents. Most recently, she's assembled a team of 40 software developers to build the next generation of tools for large group communication in Google's G Suite. A role model for work-life balance, she's earned multiple promotions while working 32-hour weeks. She's received many awards over the years, but most recently our very own 2020 Graham Medalist for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. She has a B Math and an M Math in Computer Science from the University of Waterloo. Welcome, Joanne. Third is Natalie Gordon. Natalie is the founder and CEO of Babylist, and she is in California, where yesterday it did not snow. She graduated from the Faculty of Math with a major in computer science in 2004. She worked as a software engineer for a number of years before starting her own first company, Babylist.com. And Babylist, as the name describes, is a baby registry, online retailer, and community that supports millions of pregnant women and expecting families. Natalie has loved creating this consumer brand and serves women as they go through one of the most momentous times of their lives. Natalie lives in Berkeley, California, with her two sons. Zaham Mastak is the co-founder of Founders Camp, and having worked as a product manager at the Royal Bank of Canada, she developed an innate knack for creativity and aha moments. she's managed to combine her passion for entrepreneurship, creativity, and travel by co-founding the Founders Camp, which is a 7-day entrepreneurial retreat that equips aspiring entrepreneurs with the right tools, mentorship, and mindset to start a successful venture. She's also a pitch mentor at Cooperathon, Canada's open innovation competition, and strongly believes in the notion of your most valuable asset is investing in yourself. And she has a Bachelor of Mathematics in Math and Business from the University of Waterloo. So welcome to all 4 panelists. I'm so excited to be with you here. And I'm going to direct the first question to Zaham. And that is, looking back to your childhood, did anything foreshadow your foray into entrepreneurship? When did you realize that innovation was in your blood? Did you always know it, or did you stumble into it?
Great question. Thanks, Paul. So excited to be here. I always knew innovation was in my blood. Just going back to my childhood, I grew up in a small town in Kenya, and my parents were and still are entrepreneurs. And so it's really them that instilled in me the characteristics of an aspiring entrepreneur. You know, they always encouraged me to take on challenges, to take risks. They just like took me out of my comfort zone. And so naturally I developed, I became that ambitious personality, and I was hungry and thirsty for knowledge. And so when I was 18, I finished high school, and then I had to leave my home country, Kenya, to move to Canada to come to University of Waterloo. And that was a huge step, just leaving home on my own, going to a foreign country was really scary. And I think a lot of the audience who are international students can actually relate to that. But again, because of, the way I was brought up, I knew that just getting into Waterloo, first of all, was a big deal. And I knew that a lot of people really wanted to be in a place that I was. So I knew that I couldn't take things for granted, and I had to make the most of it. So that's something that definitely impacted my foray into entrepreneurship. But more importantly, was just being at University of Waterloo. I think, just the environment there it's just high energy startup culture that's so vibrant. I remember, I used to take part in case competitions. I remember like Velocity, Communitech, the Health Prize competition. I don't know if we still have that, but I just loved problem solving and the adrenaline of being on stage and pitching and working on business decks and all of that stuff. So I think, University of Waterloo is the perfect space for an aspiring entrepreneur, and really creates the space where you can test your ideas, fail, and just learn through the process. So that was a major factor. And in fact, I'd like to say to the audience today, if you are an aspiring entrepreneur and you are at University of Waterloo, then you really need to take advantage of the resources and the community around you, because that will truly impact you in a positive way.
Fantastic answer. Thank you so much. It's amazing the supports that are now available for entrepreneurs. And as you say, it's so exciting to feel the energy on campus and the enthusiasm for entrepreneurship. And many of you who have come before are serving as role models for that next generation. And we're so grateful to not only have the supports in place, but to have strong role models like those of you who are on the panel today. Thank you. My next question is for Sherry. Sherry, knowing that you've launched multiple successful businesses, I'd like you to reflect on your very first business, and how has your working style or goals for business development changed? And then the other question is, what advice would your past self give to your current self?
Thank you, Paul. It is a privilege to be on this panel today. In my first business, it was in Silicon Valley in the late 80s, and I was focused on results, just very hungry, very ambitious. And I spent a tremendous amount of time on planes, traveling to Central South America and Asian Pacific, building much needed distribution channels. And I certainly tried to take care of the people that worked with me and for me. But I must say that I had partners who only focused on the bottom line to the exclusion of even common courtesy at times. So I would stand up to them and I would try to, and I would hold my own. I'm strong enough to do that. And I tried to help others to stand up. But eventually I had to leave that company because of, I left pre-IPO. However, I did exercise my stock options and they did IPO a year and a half later. So financially, it was a huge success for me. And my old self would say to me, even today, treating people correctly is everything. The right culture is paramount. So make sure that you and any of the people that you are working with agree on this before launching into any alliance. And today that advice is still my foundation, but it's sad to say that it has taken a little longer to sink in than it should have.
That is amazing advice. Thank you. Joanne, what is it about the environment at Google that encourages entrepreneurial pursuits? And have you ever thought about taking an idea that you have to market as a solo entrepreneur?
Well, thank you very much for the question. And also, thank you very much for inviting me to be on the panel. It's hard to go after those two wonderful answers, but someone has to go next, I guess. So that'll be me. So regarding your question, a lot of it has to do with the DNA and the culture within Google that is explicitly set. It is shared explicitly to everyone, new, old, continuing, but risk-taking is actually a very important part of Google's culture. We cannot produce and do as many things as we do if we are not encouraged to explicitly take risks. And part of that is not just the encouragement, but also not discouragement if you fail. Like we have a very much a blameless culture in terms of failure. Like we will go back, we view it as a learning experience. You can actually see this yourself in communications from the company and also in some of the products that you may or may not use. So that is one of the reasons or one of the factors that goes into entrepreneurship within Google. Is that encouragement to take risks and support. And also, I would say within the Google Waterloo office, we have made innovation one of our personal things that makes us stand apart. We are always looking for new ideas, different ways for groups to work together. Across Google, it's more of a culture of saying yes. It's not saying no. Like there's not, the default answer isn't no, the default answer is risk. So this leads to an environment where a lot of new things can be tried. Now, of course, you can imagine that in the end game, if everybody was trying something new, all the time, then it's too chaotic, and we couldn't actually get anything to market, to fruition, to land. So there has to be a healthy balance there as well. So I would actually say that the currency within Google is building teams to adhere around your mission, whatever that might be that you're working on. So that's sort of the part of the entrepreneurship and growing, because it actually it takes a lot. It takes a lot to build software at scale, like a global scale. It cannot be done with just a couple of people. Doing that activity, playing that game, figuring out how that works out, doing what you need to do to influence, to get more people excited, helping you out on your mission. That's sort of the core of entrepreneurship at Google. Now, the second part of your question about have I ever thought about taking one of my own ideas solo? So the honest answer to that is specifically is no, but the answer is a little bit more nuanced than that as well. I do feel I have a fair amount of exposure to the entrepreneurship outside of Google side of the equation as well. I used to work at a startup myself. My startup was purchased by Google to form the Google Waterloo office. At the time, I swore I would never work at a large company, which is crazy because, almost 15 years later, here I still am. But I remember those days working at the startup and sort of the raw, quick culture that entails, and it's definitely an exciting thing. Also, my spouse is a serial entrepreneur as well. He's started and gone through the process of a number of different startups, a number of them locally in town as well. And so, watching that experience as well, like I can armchair a little bit as well. I can provide some advice, that kind of thing. But I have never quite, had the urge to, go off and he's like, sometimes he'll joke with me like, oh, maybe we should work on one together. And I'm like, no, I think I'll stay and do one thing, keep the relationship healthy there. But I certainly, so it's not from a lack of exposure to the entrepreneurial environment, but it's just, and I'm not to say one is better than the other. They're just both different, but I definitely feel grateful to have had a bit of exposure to both sides.
That's awesome. I'm sure your employer will be grateful to hear that answer as well.
I guess so, if they're watching too.
Let's hope so. Thank you. Next question is then for Natalie. Natalie, students and alumni alike talk about the importance of working towards a societal good or to tackle specific problems with their tech solutions. Is that important to you? And why do you think this might be a trend in terms of female innovators?
Thanks, Paul. Also, thank you so much for having me on this panel. I'm really actually enjoying listening as someone who's just here listening to these great answers. I think women care very deeply about the impact that their work has. Inside entrepreneurship, outside entrepreneurship, I personally feel like entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship is the way to actually do that, to have that societal impact or really solve a problem at a greater scale. I think it's important because women have their own perspective of their own experiences. And when I tie that back to my own journey, I started Babylist almost a decade ago when I was having my first son. I was pregnant. I was going through this process, and it felt very clear that the people that had built all the tools available to me had not gone through this process. And so I was able to take that perspective and put holding our user, and if we're going to be very specific, a woman who's pregnant, who's feeling incredibly anxious and overwhelmed and excited and is going through this experience, and hold her and her experience at our very core. And so make decisions to help. And so every day I've gotten to actually help more and more, and now millions of pregnant women going through this incredible experience. And that's incredibly gratifying. I think women also, even if your audience is not serving women particularly, you still have that perspective, and you can still create an amazing environment for strong women at your company, and just build a company that you yourself want to go in and work at every day.
Awesome answer. It is funny. Sometimes you have these experiences and you use different products and services, and you really do wonder, have these people never actually used this thing? Because there's some pretty horrible experiences out there when you're actually going through it. That's pretty funny. Okay, I've got one question now I'd like to ask to each of the panelists, and that question is going to be, what piece of advice would you give to university students or graduates who want to become entrepreneurs or are keen to make an impact in a large organization? And I'll start with Zahim with an answer.
That is such a great question. I would say take action. Like, I think a lot of people, are so scared just to take the first step and want to wait until things are perfect. They want to wait until they have all the experience, all the knowledge. and then, you know, they have all this self-doubt, and that just holds them back from actually starting. You know, because it's never going to be perfect, and when you start, an idea is never going to come out perfect, but it's through the process that you're going to learn and iterate and, you know, just learn from it. But you won't go through that process until you actually start. So even if it's imperfect action, start somewhere and take action.
Fantastic. Thanks, Aaron. Sherry, same question. Advice you'd give to university students or graduates who want to become entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs?
Say it's similar to Zahan's. It's mine is don't be afraid to move on. I was with the U.S. government. I was quite successful there, and I wanted to move up, but I realized I had to move on from that organization to do that. So I decided, well, I have to move anyway. Not location, physical location, but I do have to move to a new office. So I decided, well, why don't I just move on? I guess I felt that entrepreneurial spirit, and I just said, okay, I want to control my own destiny. I want to make money on my own efforts. I want to invest in myself. Now, I was a mathematician, a cryptologic mathematician with the US government. I wasn't in sales, I wasn't in marketing, but I said, you know what? I want to do that. So I left the US government, I moved to Silicon Valley, and I moved on. And I pushed myself in areas that I didn't even know. Well, I knew I could do it, but in new areas. So later, when I needed to leave that toxic environment, when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to change the culture, I left. I came all the way to Canada from Silicon Valley. So that would be my advice. Don't be afraid to move on.
Awesome advice. Thank you, Sherry. Joanne, same question.
No problem. I'm just starting my video. I think that it's the advice I would give is to believe that you can solve the huge, large, unknown problems. Like don't limit your thinking and just, you know, believe in yourself. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, realize that to take responsibility for your area is like the buck stops with you. Like you need to and that you can do it. Like most importantly, that you can do it. Like don't put up artificial boundaries around yourself or wait for someone else to come along and solve your problem. At the end of the day, like it's both in an entrepreneurial and in an intrapreneurial sense, I mean, the responsibility is on you. And I think that having the confidence to realize that, I just wish I saw more, and I wish I could just tell people, you know, be more confident in that, and they would like listen. Sometimes it takes them experience to kind of learn that lesson. But you know, if I could just say one thing and hopefully people would learn it, that would probably be the one that I would say. Also, you know, I was thinking about this a lot because it was just because I think this is one of the things that particularly my graduate degree from the University of Waterloo taught me. Like up to this point, you know, your education is fairly well scripted. You know, show up and you go into a course, and yeah, it's super hard. And you have to, you know, work hard and understand how it works in order to, you know, get your goal in that course. But in a graduate context, the game changes a bit. First of all, you're not even given the problem that you're working on, you know, and you actually have to formulate your own topic, your own research area. And then when you get there, you're like, there's no one else to tell you how to do it or even what you're doing. You have to come up with all of that yourself. And that was sort of the first experience for me where that was the case, but you know, you work through it and you can do it. And I think that is one of the things that comes up over and over and over again in a professional context as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Natalie.
I thought all this advice was fantastic. If I were going to build on Zaham's advice, which is if you're able to launch early, and I've felt this with my very first project, that like complete terror of just even posting it on Facebook to my friend group, because you just feel so vulnerable. And I always, I'm the first person to put money in if a friend of mine has a Kickstarter or anything like that, because I know that feeling of this vulnerability, like you've worked so hard on something and it's you and you're putting it out there in the world. But once you do that, the advantages are huge. Not only can you start learning and learning the right lessons, but you actually are a much more interesting mentee. I think we all want mentorship, and it really is through one-on-one mentorship that you really will grow and like learn the right lessons at the right time and meet fantastic people, help fantastic people will help you. And when you haven't launched something, or I would say like a bad request would say, can we go out for coffee and I'll pick your brain? But if you actually have something live, you can say very specifically, I'm seeing this thing in Google Analytics, or I've seen this heat. Like you can ask a really great question that actually is engaging for your mentor to help you with and to answer. And so it also has that advantage that's not your main purpose, but helps you grow.
Amazing answers. Okay, I've got questions that now for each of you. The next question I'm actually going to ask to the same question to two of you, but I'll start with Sherry, and that is, how was your background in mathematics incorporated either into your business or projects? And Sherry, I know you've spent a lot of time in the encryption world and coming from that part, but is there a key takeaway from your post-secondary education that you still utilize in your business today?
It's persistence. 4 of the ventures that I've been involved with, as you were saying, were in information security companies. We're promoting state-of-the-art cryptographic solutions, and cryptography and encryption and security are based on what is called hard mathematical problems. In all of these companies I was involved with or led the sales efforts, my background in mathematics gave me the foundation that I needed to be a highly effective, as a salesperson even, because I knew the products and the technology. For example, when I was with the Silicon Valley company, I was the head of Asia Pacific, and I traveled often to Japan. Now, I'm a single woman traveling by myself to Japan. Maybe that didn't sound so crazy now, but in the 1990s, it was extremely unusual. But I was extremely successful because my degree and experience in mathematics quickly established me as an expert, which broke down many barriers, including the big one, being a woman working in Japan. So I learned a lot of things in my undergraduate and graduate studies, but the takeaway is persistence. And I have to use that every day, even now, in every aspect of my life.
Background in mathematics and computing been incorporated in your business or projects? And do you have a key takeaway from your post-secondary education that you utilize in your business today?
It is, well, it's interesting. I guess, my undergraduate experience was like, nigh on 20 years ago now, but a lot of the same principles have proven to actually not date themselves through time. And I'm thinking back, some of the courses that have been the most useful, again, in my career are the ones, data structures and algorithms. Those come up, not that I'm writing data structures or algorithms every day, but it's really important to be able to understand when someone describes to you their software system, you have to understand the core, the basics of what makes it interesting or difficult or hard, and the basic capabilities, definitely came from my degree there, starting with data structures and algorithms. Also, principles of concurrency, that one, multi-threaded, single-threaded, massively scaling, how to scale, all that comes together. Distributed systems, as you can imagine, working Google is incredibly important. Also, I would say from working on client software, user experience and graphics courses continuously come up as well. databases and storage. So even though, yes, of course, the technologies have changed in the time, but that basic terminology and understanding of at least what this is basically about have stood me well throughout my career. One interesting thing that I want to point out is that it's come up, and you actually learned this in elementary school, is the scientific method. So you think back to, like, grade 4 when you were writing up, purpose of your experiment, method, observations, and conclusions. This actually comes up over and over again in large-scale software engineering, because you are continuously tasked with trying to figure out why part of your system doesn't work. And often the only tool that you have is to poke it with some sort of different input, form a hypothesis first, poke it with some new input, observe what happened, make a conclusion, then try to use that to fix it. So that didn't particularly come specifically from the University of Waterloo, but it's something that I used in my schooling that continuously comes up over and over again. I want to reiterate the answer that I had earlier, which was mostly what I learned at a grad school was that ability to take this huge amorphous problem that you or maybe nobody else has any idea of how to solve, and it's your job to push it forward. How you're even going to start tackling that sort of problem. That is definitely the skill that I learned, that I took most away from my graduate schooling, and been useful time and time again, along with the confidence to do that. And including in areas that I have no formal training in. I mean, you as a person who has training in logic and eventually years of life experience, you can bring all that in, and believe in you have an important contribution to make in areas that you might not even have formal training in. The other sort of fun area that I actually use a lot of my schooling still in is interviewing and hiring. This is a huge part of my job at working at a large company, but it's important in any professional context to hire the right people. But the way the Google interviewing process works is that we're basically we're testing for computer science basic principles, and a lot. One of my roles is as a hiring committee member, so I read a lot of so other people do interviewing and then write down the transcript of the interview, and then I have to read that and decide as part of a committee whether this person should be hired or not. So I get just a huge range of questions about all areas of computer science. So that's actually been an area that has helped me sort of dust off some of the things that I learned that many years ago as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. My kids are now 12 and 15, and so I'm starting to relive the mathematical journey again for the second time. It's amazing. You can have a degree in math and still be stumped by some grade 10 questions for a while, but it all comes back eventually. So it's good to know it's still there. Zaham, question for you next is about self-doubt. We all experience it, and especially those who are putting their ideas out there for others to see. What did that look like, and how did you overcome it? And what advice would you give to our audience who may sometimes struggle from time to time with self-doubt when they put ideas out there?
That is a great question, Paul. Self-doubt is something that I feel a lot of us struggle with in our personal journeys. And it's something you just have to learn to overcome. It's something that I still am working on. And just going back to what that looked like for me, so my colleague and I were really passionate about travel and entrepreneurship. And we were like, how can we combine these two things to create something unique? And so we came up with the idea of a moving incubator, and it would be like a 3-month program. We would have our participants traveling to 3 different countries. We would incorporate entrepreneurship, pitch nights, mentorship, all of that fun stuff. And we spent a lot of time and energy on that. We did a lot of marketing, branding, but it didn't quite work out. And for multiple reasons, 3 months was just too long of a period of time frame. But then, we went back to the drawing board, iterated through multiple versions of the idea, brainstormed some more, and until we came up with what currently is the Founders Camp, which is a 7-day experience with the same sort of concept. and which was then a success. So I think that, but before we got to that point, there were so many moments of self-doubt, moments where we were just like, oh my God, this is not working. We're spending so much time on this. Like, what are we even doing? And I think it's during that moment when we're like, okay, we've only got two options here. We either keep pushing at it until eventually something somehow will work out, or then we just give up and say, oh, well, we tried. And then of course, the second one wasn't really an option. So, we kept at it. But I think the advice I would give to the audience about self-doubt is that when you have an idea or you want to pursue something, then really try to make sure that you truly are passionate about it and understand your why, because understand that, why is it that you want to pursue this? What is the purpose? What is your passion? Because self-doubt will creep in no matter what. And it's at that time when you really need to go back to your passion, your purpose, your why, and make sure that these are really, really strong to then keep you going through that journey. And the second piece of advice I would give is that this is something I practice myself, and it really, really helps, is affirmations, which are really, really powerful, whereby you tell yourself every single day that I am good enough, I have what it takes, and my idea is revolutionary. It's going to change the world. It's going to have an impact. And you tell yourself that every single day until you truly believe it and it's programmed in your subconscious mind. Because here's the thing, if you don't truly believe in yourself and you don't believe in your idea, then how are you possibly going to, convince someone else to believe in it, right? So that would be my advice for the audience.
Awesome advice. Thank you. Next question is for Natalie. Natalie, you've done something that very few people do, which is to build a consumer brand from scratch. And so my question for you is, what's the most difficult thing about building a consumer brand from scratch?
I love consumer brands. Everything is very difficult, probably at all stages, but also really fun. At the base level, solve a problem that people care about. And I think if this is your first venture, solve a problem really well that only a few people care about is the right way to launch this and actually start figuring it out. And then if you're able to do that also with this idea, it's great if it can have a great business model, so a way that you make money to grow the business, or has a huge vision, and so you can raise money for this idea. When Babylist started, it was just me, and it started solving a very, very small problem. I really wanted to ask for someone to walk our German Shepherd at 7 a.m. after we had our baby. That home-cooked meals, cloth diapering service, and a couple of the regular things. And that was the seed, and that is a small problem. But we did it really well. And I also think something I see, I guess in myself and others, when you have an engineering background, you can build the thing. You can think of the thing and manifest it into the world. That's not the only thing. Maybe that's half of the way there for a consumer brand. There's this other half that where your instincts might be to add that new feature or redesign this flow. You actually need to be talking to your customers. You actually need to be doing customer service. You actually need to be figuring out distribution, which is a whole other part of scaling a consumer brand. It has a lot under it. And so if I were going to say, yeah, solve a problem, but then solving the problem is only halfway there. You have to go outside of this box of what you've learned to do the rest, to really position it and scale it.
Fabulous. Thank you very, very much for that. Okay, we're now going to turn to some questions from our audience. And the first question I have, and I'm going to ask each of you, is if you weren't allowed to do your current job any longer, what would you want to do? So I will start with Ham on this.
I think I would do a lot more of mentorship because that is something that I truly am passionate about. Even from the founders camp, hosting the retreat, helping people gain clarity through their ideas, helping them through that journey, helping them overcome their limiting beliefs, and just things like that. I really find it amazing to see that transformation. And I think, I used to hear that retreats are life-changing, and I used to think, oh, that's just a marketing thing. Like, what do you mean life-changing? But when I actually hosted this, it really was life-changing. And so I think just seeing somebody go through that process and being able to help them through that is something that I personally find very self-fulfilling. And I don't think, any like paycheck or job or anything else materialistic would give me that self-fulfillment. So I would definitely do a lot more of mentorship.
Sherry, same question. If you weren't allowed to do your current job any longer, what would you want to do?
This happened to me because when I sold my company in 2017 to the Robert Bosch Group, I signed a 5-year non-compete. Now I've been in information security since I left graduate school. And it was interesting to say, okay, I'm not going to do that any longer. So I stayed with the company for a year for the transition. And in 2018, I retired, but I really just rewired. So I had to find another, I just couldn't retire. So I had to find another passion. And so I founded this new company, Profound Impact, which is to measure the worldwide impact of collectively and of individuals within an organization. So although I can't do information security for a limited time, but I don't think I'd even go back to it now, even after my 5-year non-compete is finished, but because I found this new passion. And I think that's why I just replaced one passion for another one.
Awesome answer. Thank you very, very much. Joanne, if you weren't allowed to do your current job any longer, what would you do?
I think I would probably retire for a bit. I don't know, we haven't heard that yet, but I think I would retire for a bit and pursue a lot of hobbies and other types of things like that. Oh, my kids have arrived home, but that's the vagaries of doing a panel for at home. I think they've sent them upstairs. Okay, right. So I would play my flute a lot more. I took up flute as an adult about 3 or 4 years ago, and my daughter did. I would totally do that more. I play in a number of flute ensembles now. I would spend more time doing that. I trained martial arts for 10 years and only, left recently. And the only reason I left was because I just don't have enough hours in the day. Like I'd progressed to a level where in order to achieve the next rank, I was going to have to really double down on my time commitment. And I said, to my teacher, like, if I was retired, I would, so that I would have no trouble filling up my time. So I would definitely spend the first while doing that kind of thing. Jerry, you're going to have to go upstairs to get some help. Okay. Sorry, that's my son coming. He wants an iPad unlock. He's going to have to go find someone else to help out. So I would do that. I would, spend more time with my kids cooking. I'm enjoying this homeschooling thing. Like before lockdown, I fantasized about, homeschooling. Maybe I should be homeschooling my kids. And now at least I get the chance to try that. I've thought about, I'd like to be one of these people who, travel around, take their kids out of school and travel around for a year. I would love to do that kind of thing. So I really don't think I would have any trouble filling up my time for the first while. But like some of the other panel members, like, could I do this forever? I don't know, probably not. I loved Zaham's answer. Mentoring and coaching is a huge passion of mine as well. I believe I would totally miss that. Armchair quarterbacking for my husband's business might not be enough. I should be giving back in other ways as well. Another thing I would like to do, I'm a member of Social Venture Partners Waterloo region here, and that's it's an organization where they actually, in addition to financially funding, local charities, use the partners' expertise to help out the charities. And I feel, I would have a lot to give in that area as well. So I'm pretty sure, I could just say, hey, Rose, I got some time, and she would know easily what to do at that time. So I don't know. That is a great question. And, one day, like Sherry's, I like listening to Sherry's answers as well. She's like, just stop doing it and go do something else. Maybe someday I'll do the same.
And then Natalie, same questions for you. If you weren't able to do what you're doing today, what would you do?
I think right now, in the current environment, I have so much respect for healthcare providers. And so I don't think this is a fantasy land. I don't know if that's a second career that I would go in, but I find healthcare fascinating and so important right now.
Another question from the audience is, how do startup organizations manage their risks? Do they have governance structures in place? For example, a board. Maybe I'll ask Sherry to take this one. Sherry, how do your organizations, or how have they managed their risk?
I bring in partners, not necessarily day-to-day executives with me, but strategic partners, finding a champion. And once that champion, hopefully also would be a customer, commits, then that's a little, you feel like, okay, now I have proven that somebody wants my product, and also proven that they will not only buy my product, they will also be a champion for me. So that's what I've done in the past.
That's great. And that question of risk is so challenging in the entrepreneurial environment, because you've all said it's about being able to take calculated risks. It's about believing in yourself and your ideas. But there are ways, as you've all talked about, to mitigate risk. So, we do have to take bold steps and do exciting and scary things to be entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. But there are ways to manage the risk, either by working with our clients and customers, as you have, or in working with boards and things like that. Great answers. Next question, I think I'm going to ask to everyone. I love this question. It says, is there an ideal type of person that you think should be an entrepreneur or intrapreneur? So maybe I'll start with Zaham.
Yeah, absolutely. Entrepreneurship is definitely not for everyone. You really have to be just willing to take risks and willing to fail. I feel like a lot of people are so scared of failing, so scared of being criticized, and it just holds people back. And once you get over that fear and you learn that failing is just a part of the process, and the sooner you can fail, the faster you will move ahead, and you'll learn through that. And when you can, make sure that doesn't hold you back, you just open this doors of opportunities. So I think definitely as an entrepreneur, you have to not be scared to fail.
Excellent answer. Thank you for that. Joanne, how about you? An ideal type of person that you think should be an entrepreneur or intrapreneur?
That's an interesting question. So I don't want to say that there is an ideal profile, because of, in terms of diversity, I think a lot of people can succeed. And in terms of diversity, I believe that I just don't want to be seen as limiting, anybody saying like, oh, well, if that's not me, then I couldn't succeed. Like, definitely not. So, and also it was just making me think of this question is, one of the first things I did, one of the last things I did right before lockdown, late February, was I had the chance to be a pitch, not coach, but a pitch judge for Communitech's Fierce Founders event in the Communitech Hub in Kitchener. So basically, over the course of 2 days, had 25 female founders giving their pitch, and then grade it according to a rubric. But the thing that experience taught me is that there's an enormous range of founders, of female founders, of. So, people I wouldn't have, maybe have thought of, but, they're doing great in their role. And I hats off, absolutely hats off to them. But, you know, I think one of the things that they all had in common that I was so impressed by is just they were so outgoing and bold and just willing to get out there and get their message out there. I'm sure it's possible to succeed not doing that as well, but I've got to believe that it's also just going to give you an incredible advantage in the environment that you have to work in.
And Natalie, same question for you.
I'm actually an introvert, and I think that there are different ways to communicate that might not be really like traditional extroversion. One thing that came up for me with this question is something Joanne touched on in a previous answer, which is when you're an undergrad, it's pretty clear what success looks like. And you have people to model yourself on how to be successful, which let's say is getting good grades or getting good grades in really hard classes. And I think that, I think an important quality is being able to grow and being able to learn outside of kind of that formula being given to you. So it's not just figuring things out, it's figuring out the things that like you need to figure out. It is also what Zaham said, that you're going to figure things out through failure. You're going to figure things out through putting yourself in really uncomfortable situations.
Thank you all. Thank you all of the panelists. It is time to wrap up. Unfortunately, that has been an amazing hour that we've had. I want to thank the online attendees who participated and to our panelists. Thanks for joining us today in celebration of International Women in Mathematics Day. It is an important day. It's a great time also to think about the connections that we make, connections between current students perhaps and alumni. I think you've seen that individuals like our panelists today can serve not only as incredible role models, but just have an unbelievable network that we can all tap into and benefit from as we find our own journeys and discover our own things that we're passionate about and wish to pursue. If you do want any more information on entrepreneurial supports that exist at the University of Waterloo, certainly encourage you to participate and connect with organizations like Velocity or the on-campus arm, which is Concept by Velocity, or better yet, come see us at the Accelerator Center if you wish. And all of us would, within this great entrepreneurial ecosystem, would always be more than happy to point you in the right direction, get you the connections you need to pursue your ideas and really turn them into exciting innovations and create the kinds of scalable, strong ventures as we've seen from our panelists today. Please keep this conversation going. You can join the chat groups in the new Waterloo Math digital community or the Women in Math Facebook page. And also, please remember, you can help to dispel stereotypes for young women who are considering math or computer science careers by adding your own voices on social media using the hashtag #IamGoodAtMath. Up next at 5:30, we'll have our final panel of the day, which is Coronavirus, How Math is Helping to Answer Crucial COVID-19 Questions.